This is a video looking at writing chemical equations in the context of neutralization reactions. So if you recall from a previous video, a neutralization reaction is basically involves the reaction of an acid and a base to give a salt and water. Common acids explored typically in Year 9 are things like nitric acid, sulfuric acid, and hydrochloric acid. So these are the three common acids. There's also acetic acid, but not as common as these three. Typical bases explored in Year 9 science is sodium hydroxide. Things like potassium oxide, or other group 1 oxides for that matter, calcium hydroxide. These are the three common ones, I'd say. So we've explored reactions like hydrochloric acid plus sodium hydroxide. Okay, and if you recall, to get the name of the salt, you go, so you look for the metal first, which is sodium in this case. So it's sodium. And then the non-metal ending, it comes from the acid, which is chloride, plus water. So that's the generic, that's the word equation. Let's now get into the chemical equation. A chemical equation is an equation involving letters, symbols typically, and numbers. So let's go from here to a chemical equation. So the starting point is to have your periodic table ready and your general knowledge of acids and bases. So hydrochloric acid is written as HCl. Okay, it's made of hydrogen and chlorine. Sodium hydroxide, so you can memorize the base sodium hydroxide, or we can just write it using a periodic table. Sodium Na, so the first step is to write sodium, and hydroxide's OH minus by definition. So there's a table of polyatomic ions in your good science textbook for Year 9 and 10. OH minus is the hydroxide polyatomic ion. Now sodium has a valency of +1. Okay, that's the charge formed when it becomes ionized, when it becomes a charged atom. It's in group 1, so it's got a valency of +1. Now to combine these two, you stick them together and you get sodium hydroxide. Now you don't bring down the ones, okay? So there's a 1 here as well. That's the rule with this, because the +1 and the -1 cancel out. If they were hypothetically +2 and -2, same thing, they cancel out. You wouldn't bring them down. So we get this so far. Makes sodium chloride. Now sodium is Na plus. Once again, chloride comes from chlorine, Cl, and chlorine is in group 17. It's got a valency of -1. And sticking these together, you get NaCl. Okay, you don't crisscross the +1 and the -1 because they cancel out once again. And water is always written as H2O. So 2 hydrogens stuck to an oxygen. And there you have it. That's your word, that's your chemical equation. Write it neater. HCl, hydrochloric acid, plus NaOH, sodium hydroxide, makes NaCl, sodium chloride, plus H2O, water. And they might ask you to balance this in an exam. So as we've been doing before, first step is to make a list. So HCl, NaO. Okay, in the following order from left to right, HCl, NaO. Similarly, on the right-hand side, it's the same thing, same order, so don't get mixed up. And then you count how many H's. There's 2 on the left. Cl's, there's 1 on the left. Na, there's 1 on the left. And oxygen, there's 1 on the left. On the right-hand side, there's 2 hydrogen, there's 1 Cl, there's 1 Na, and there's 1 oxygen. So yes, it's balanced. It's already balanced. Let's do another one. Let's do calcium hydroxide plus sulfuric acid. This is an acid-base reaction because you've got sulfuric acid, which is an acid, calcium hydroxide, a base. Okay, bases contain hydroxide always. And this will make a salt and water. Now the salt is the calcium first. Remember, the metal goes first. And the ending of the sulfuric acid, which is sulfate, calcium sulfate. So we've written the word equation. Let's now go into the chemical equation. Once again, use your periodic table. Calcium, symbol Ca. Okay, hydroxide's OH minus. Now calcium is in group 2. It's got a valency of +2. And combining these, you get CaOH, brackets around the OH because it's a compound. 2 goes at the bottom. Okay, -1 stays. Plus sulfuric acid by definition is H2SO4. Okay, it contains hydrogen. All acids contain hydrogen. You just have to memorize this type of acid, H2SO4, fortunately. Makes calcium sulfate. Calcium is Ca+2. Sulfate, you need to know this polyatomic ion, it's SO42-. Sticking them together, this is what you get. The 2's, remember, don't come down because you have +2 and -2, they cancel to give 0. And the water is just H2O, plus H2O. And then we have it. We have CaOH2, calcium hydroxide, plus sulfuric acid, H2SO4, makes CaSO4, calcium sulfate, plus H2O. Let's balance this thing. Step 1, make a list, CaOHS. Similarly on the right, CaOHS. And then you count. Calcium, there's 1 on the left. Oxygen, there's 2 plus 4, which is 6. Hydrogen, there's 2 plus 2, which is 4. Sulfur, there's 1. On the right, calcium, there's 1. Oxygen, there's 2, there's 5. Hydrogen, there's 2. And sulfur, there's 1. You can see there's a bit of an issue here with the oxygen and hydrogens. Let's fix this. Now, I would go to the hydrogen first because it's easier. How do you turn 2 into 4? You times it by 2, you get 4. And that 2 goes at the front here. So the hydrogen now is 4, that's fixed. And the oxygen, there's now 2 plus 4, which is 6. And there you go, problem solved. It's now balanced. I'll now leave you to do the following questions. Suppose I give you magnesium hydroxide plus nitric acid. Okay, so write down the word equation and then the chemical equation using the following, the processes that I've been using.